All right. Well, Ryan, I don't know what you wanted to talk about, but Dixon's not here, so I didn't know if we wanted to kill time. I think he's still maybe on his way. He said something about picking up some whiskey.
Something.
Yeah.
Who's supposed to host this, though? Is he supposed to host it, or are you supposed to host it? I know it's not me.
I know Dixon is the most patriotic of all of us, so I thought he would have to host something that took place on July 4th, just so he could talk about how much he loves America. But I don't, not entirely.
Even if we do it, will we be able to get it out in time for July 4th for it to be relevant?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just have Dixon edit it. That'll be easy. Like, he just does it
he's
fast.
Supposed to edit it, or he's going to host it and he's going to edit it?
I think we could turn around to maybe he could do it in like 30 minutes. I think he could do the edit in 30 minutes.
30 minutes? 30 minutes is like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Y'all know me. Know how I earn a living. I'll host this discussion for you, but it ain't gonna be easy. Jaws discussion. Not like getting pissed drunk talking about a sci-fi original shit show. This kind of movie talk, swallow a host whole. Talking box office, talking production, and suddenly down you go into Jaws exploitation. But we gotta discuss it, so we can capitalize on July 4th, like all those retailers. Bring in your listeners. Put all your analytics on an uptrend. But it ain't gonna be pleasant. I value my hosting style a lot more than $3, Chief. Man stops me on the street, I'll talk about Jaws for $3. But in the booth, with actual structure, 10. But you've got to make up your minds. If you want to stay on your release schedule, then ante up. You want to play it cheap? Be on the bottom page of an RSS feed by winter. $10 for me by myself. For that, you get the intro, the outro, the whole damn thing.
Ryan, can I borrow $10?
Welcome to Afterthoughts. I'm going to just take the hosting reins on this podcast. I do not have $10 to keep this going, so we're just going to have to drive this ship together.
You know where to find me.
Oh, man. Don't leave, Robert Shaw. You're a national treasure.
He stomped out of the room singing about Spanish ladies. I think we lost him. So yes, I am Ryan King, your host for today, and joining me we have...
John Garcia. Hey, Ryan, you don't even have a check for $10.
Yeah. Do people take checks anymore? I feel like that's always like no checks, no personal checks.
Yeah. I have to mail out like a 4-page form to get checks anymore. I don't know where that goes.
We're going to bounce a $10 check and the fee is going to cost us more. Yeah.
$35 overdraft fee on a $10 check.
Oh, Dixon, you're here. Oh, my God.
Guys, what's up?
Yeah, that voice is joining us.
Yeah, that's me, Michael Dixon. What's up? Your favorite Afterthoughts host over here, showing up late as usual.
Whoa. How'd you know you were my favorite?
See, I knew it.
Next to Robert Shaw, of course, who has not hosted Afterthoughts yet. But
yeah, that's a steep fee.
Yeah.
We'll get $10 someday.
Yeah.
We'll
it's the price of one banana. That's hard to come by.
Well, for today, we're going to have to get a bigger podcast because we are talking about Jaws.
There is a creature alive today who has survived millions of years of evolution without change, without passion, and without logic. It lives to kill. A mindless eating machine. It will attack and devour anything. It is as if God created the devil and gave him jaws.
Which, with July 4th being recently passed for us, who knows when you're listening to this. But yeah, this summertime, sharks in the water, July 4th, summer blockbuster, seemed like the right time to kind of dig into not the first Steven Spielberg, but really his first hit. Why did it work? Why is it such a huge hit? No point in talking about this synapse. There's a fucking shark. get out of the water.
Much like Tommy Wiseau's movie, it's about a big shark.
Yes, it's a bigger shark, but not
Yeah.
not as big as the sharks in movies these days, honestly.
Yeah, go see The Meg, everybody. That movie fucking rocks.
We're in an arms
Yeah.
race with sharks. Okay.
Fucking yes, yeah, we're gonna go out and personally jump and spear these giant sharks ourselves off of a sea-doo. Yeah, so I have watched Jaws several times. This is my first time revisiting it in maybe a decade. I don't think I've watched it that recently. So definitely kind of going back, wanting to look at it as like an older movie, an early blockbuster, trying to think about what actually made it successful and brought audiences in. I think it was 62 million people at the time, which was a pretty big box office. But try to kind of understand like why was that driven in? And I did watch it with my son. So I got his perspective as well.
Oh, nice. What do you think?
It's a PG movie, so it's perfectly fine.
Yes.
PG was a much broader category in 1975 than it
Yes.
is today.
Yeah, 1975, anything went in a PG, apparently.
Yeah, you can put an F word in a PG movie. Spaceballs prove that.
Yeah, they didn't have
Yeah,
PG-13
true.
until like the 80s, right? The mid 80s or
It
so.
ruined PG movies forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. I think there's interesting things to talk about, like, the directing, the music, and just, how 1975 versus the way a movie is now, like this kind of movie and the pacing, things like that. So, but I mean, I enjoyed it. I kind of still enjoyed it, that it works for me still. But John, what's your general take on Jaws watching it?
I think I've seen Jaws 3 times. There's only 2 times a year that are appropriate to watch Jaws: July 4th and Shark Week. Actually, I'm just lying.
Those are pretty close together, aren't
You can,
they?
yeah, you can watch Jaws any time of the year because it's great. But those are the times when it thematically lines up with
Yeah.
what's going on. Because I feel like Jaws also sparked Shark Week. It just
Oh,
obviously
definitely. Yeah.
heard so many people say that I've talked to who saw Jaws when they were a kid or whatever. Just like, yeah, I didn't go in the water for like a really long time. Just like my dad was like, I slept with the lights on when I watched The Exorcist. Like, it's one of those movies. And now it's like the shark, I can definitely tell, a little more animatronic. I can see those kind of things. I've seen more believable shark creatures rendered, but the actual tension, the score, like the cinematography, Steven Spielberg's blocking is so fucking great. And anyone seeing the characters kind of splayed, it was when we watched 2001, had a similar like vibe to it, where like Spielberg just knows how to line actors up in shot composition and really just lead you through a scene and just lets you focus purely on what's going on between the characters and the creature. I really enjoyed it. I had a fantastic time. I watched it with Dixon. We were just kind of like enraptured in that John Williams score and how much blood there is in that fucking movie. Jeez, there's so much blood in this movie. I forgot that everybody gushes like they're in a Japanese samurai movie the moment that they get bit by a shark. But I assume that's probably what happens. I mean, I just never seen a shark bite or a shark attack, but
I imagine it's not pretty.
but I love Roy Schneider in it. Roy Scheider.
Scheider.
Roy
Roy
Scheider.
Scheider.
Rob Schneider, Roy Scheider, very different people.
Yes. I love Roy Scheider in the movie. I love Richard Dreyfuss in it. And of course, Robert Shaw. They make up a power trio. And I'm also just completely obsessed with how much Robert Shaw fucked with Richard Dreyfuss on the set of the movie and all the shit he did.
Yeah.
Shaw was a troublemaker. Shaw was an instigator. He liked to get people riled up.
He was totally malicious. He really thought Dreyfus needed a slapping down.
He was the kindest, gentlest, funniest guy you ever met. Then we'd walk to the set, and on the way to the set, he was possessed by some evil troll.
Just sounds really fucked, but also it's captivating drama.
That
from behind the
sounds
scenes.
incredible. Was he like method acting? Just like really
No, he
getting
was
in there?
drunk.
He was totally
He was actually
drunk.
honestly
So,
drunk.
yes.
So it is
So, yes.
method acting, I guess. But
Yeah.
One day, he was coming down the gangplank. He had a glass of bourbon in his hand, and he said, "Help me out, will you, Richard?" And I said, "You want me to help you out?" "Yeah."
Richard took the shot glass out of Robert's hand and threw it out the window.
At which point, every drinker on the crew went, "Ooh."
Robert Shaw fucked with him just instinctually being drunk. He like pointed a fire hose at his face and fucking sprayed him down in the middle of a scene, some other shit. Just really fucked up. But supposedly it kind of built that tension between the characters even better. So,
I mean, that makes sense for their character dynamic for sure.
yeah. But yeah, I love the cast. I love the score. I really enjoy this movie, and I'm glad I got to watch it again. And it was a 4K restoration that we watched, which was glorious. It was a great time. So, yeah, Dixon.
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of what you said, John. Yeah, the 4K disc was really great. Just a very great restoration from the original negative that just looked great. Like it looked like watching it on film. Like a lot of 4K discs they'll like do a bunch of noise reduction and try to make it look like a digital film. And this was like very much leaning into the fact that it was shot on film in 1975, and it looked really really great on John's badass projector. But yeah, I think Jaws is an interesting movie because like I have very mixed feelings about it. About the movie itself, it's fucking great, and I have no mixed feelings about it. The implications on the culture, I have very mixed feelings about, and very negative feelings about. So I really like the movie, but I almost wish it didn't exist because of like what it did to American culture and cinema from there. Like I think there's an argument to be made that Jaws is the most influential film of all time. Like, I don't know that Star Wars happens if Jaws doesn't happen. Like, it'd be interesting to kind of talk through how this affected American cinema and American culture. I feel like it led to our modern society more than any one other movie has. Like aside from that, the movie's a fucking blast. Like it's just, and I think what makes it work really well are the characters that are just so like the three main characters, Brody, Quint, and Hooper, are just so fun and just really great to follow along with, and their dynamic between the three of them is awesome. You got the like shitty mayor who's a hilarious character to laugh at and mock as you're watching the movie. And really like the core cast is so good. They're perfectly cast for those roles, and it just works really well. And then obviously the score by John Williams is so good, and it just builds that tension and creates that horror and dread. There are so many scenes where in lieu of visual effects, they are just playing that John Williams score and just kind of moving the camera around through the water, and you're on the edge of your seat and worried about like where is the shark gonna come from. And they're sometimes they just bring it right out, other times they have some misdirects, and just everything in the movie is done really well. It's like a blockbuster that is done right, and I think a lot of American blockbusters now are done poorly to a degree where it almost feels condescending, where it's like, well, oh, you like superheroes, we're gonna make this thing, and like we're not gonna put a lot of effort into it. We're gonna CGI everything. It's gonna look like shit, but you're gonna like it, and you're gonna go. And Jaws is a shining example of a blockbuster that is just made so well and crafted to be this really great film. And it's not it's not like a wonderful piece of art that is trying to say something about humanity or something like that. It's just a really well made blockbuster that's like kind of a dumb story, but it's just super fun, and it's really well made. So yeah, I really enjoy it every time I watch it. I think this is the third time I've seen it. I saw it about a year ago. They showed it at Bullock at the IMAX theater, and I saw it there, and that was pretty cool as well. So yeah, it was really fun to revisit it. Side note, John and I were hanging out the other day, and he had an idea that I really liked, and I decided to run with it, where if we watch an action movie, we have a segment called Fight and Flight.
Fight and flight.
Where we do a flight of whiskey to pair with the action movie that we watched. I don't know if Jaws counts as an action movie, but that sounds like it would be fun to try to do. And so I am experimenting here today, and listeners, let us know if you like this idea. But I've purchased 3 whiskeys that we are pairing with this film that like kind of match with the 3 acts of the movie. Ryan is in California off by himself drinking whatever he has on hand, but John and I, for the first act of this movie, are drinking Jack Daniel's Bonded. It's like an all-American, mass-produced whiskey, but it's well-crafted, and it's like a classic American thing, like this town, Amity, this little beach community. It's very all-American. So I felt like that worked pretty well for the first act of the film to pair with it. If you don't like Jack Daniel's, I understand. Most of it fucking sucks, but Bonded is really good, and it, it's mass-produced, mass appeal, but it's actually pretty tasty. So.
We're not sponsored by Jack Daniel's Bonded.
We are not. We are not.
But I will say, Amity and whiskey both mean friendship to me.
Oh, good point. Good point.
Nice. I'm actually drinking Jack Daniel's Bonded. That's what I have.
shit.
No, I don't have 3 whiskeys, and I don't have the ones you have to pair with. But I'm just gonna work through my Bonded through the whole thing. I had to go get something, decent and straightforward and mixable because I had that fucking peanut butter whiskey screwball or whatever.
Oh, dear God.
Yeah, which I was like, nope, and immediately was like, I gotta go back and get something decent. So
I think that peanut butter whiskey is the result of Jaws. I want to
it's the Jaws 3 of whiskeys. Yeah. So if you hear us getting progressively more tanked throughout this to where we're singing sea shanties, you know why.
I'm going to be laying on the floor at the end of this podcast.
I'm going to be laying half in a shark's mouth at the end of this podcast on the open seas.
Later in the podcast, when you least expect it, I will reveal the second and the third whiskey once we finish our first whiskey.
So starting off, I do want to talk about the story. It is relatively straightforward and simple, but I think it's interesting to know that this comes from a novel that is not as straightforward.
Oh, I didn't know this was based on anything.
Yeah.
Is it The Old Man in the Sea? Anyway, sorry, right?
Yeah, it's based on a novel that involves like subplots about the mafia, and Hooper has an affair with the chief's wife, and there's all these other convoluted things going on in the town, and they cut all of that out and just left it's right before July 4th. We're on an island. That's a big deal because everyone comes here for the tourist season. Shark kills a couple things, and then eventually we got to go kill the shark, and that's it. And that plot's that straightforward. But I do think it works to be streamlined.
I don't know, man. I feel like what you just described to me is the Jaws equivalent of the Green Knight. If Richard Dreyfuss is going to commit adultery, and then they have to go kill a shark at the very end of it. That seems like a big challenge.
That's a good point, yeah.
A24,
I think that,
shark.
You are talking about like 2 different types of movies, right? If we actually have like this other intrigue, these other things going on, and the shark is kind of part of it, that's a movie a little bit slower pace. You have to kind of pay attention to a few different things. There's a few more characters. This one is that distilled summer movie. I was just like, look, and it is more like a horror movie in that idea of just like, we know there's a thing after us. Like, I don't need anything else around it. I don't need character development, honestly, much. Like, I just need there's a thing and we got to beat the thing. And then that's the end of the movie. We're in, we're out.
I'm picturing like Roy Scheider walks in on his wife fucking his neighbor or something, or fucking the mayor. That'd be great. She's fucking the mayor, and he's so upset that he wants to die, and therefore he just plunges full on into hunting the shark, and he becomes obsessive about it. And he's like, life's not worth living. I'm gonna go fucking kill this shark and risk everything to do this.
And then Robert Shaw could be. Why are we doing a treatment for Jaws? Right?
Yeah, right. Why are we?
That's a good point. It's very good as it is.
But Robert Jaws, like Robert Jaws,
Robert Jaws.
Robert Jaws. Robert Shaw's character is like a dark mirror of Roy Scheider's in that scenario there, where it's like he's been just hunting. I mean, we saw his house in the movie. Or his boat shed,
just
I suppose,
like
that
100 shark jaws nailed to the wall.
Yeah, it makes so much sense that he would be like, I guess if you want to come, I'll show you how fucking dark this can be. We'll do that.
Show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Yeah, exactly. And Roy Scheider at the end's like, I want to live again, Clarence. I want to live again.
So you say he's the dark mirror of it. Doesn't that mean he's been like terrorizing by sharks, but now he's going out to have an affair with one?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, there we go.
Fully mirrored.
Jaws 2, the fucking.
Yeah, you gotta be careful here giving ideas because we're gonna get a remake. The Jaws, we're gonna get a remake.
Oh,
I would go out and see that on opening day.
Yeah. So talking about I would say from the plot, it is so straightforward in like our sort of bad guy and the mayor in a way, but he gets his little bit of comeuppance by more people dying.
That's right.
One of the dumbest characters of all time in the history of cinema. Yeah.
Also, one of the most true to real life characters in politics.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, true. Yeah, exactly. Cover ups and deals. And we get a little bit of insight into each of our 3 main characters of kind of where they're at. And right, we have this idea of Brody, who was a cop in New York and couldn't take all the body count, I guess, out there, and thinks he's going to come to this island and it's not going to be a big deal. And we're 6 months, it sounds like, into his career here, and now it's the shit hits a fan. Quint, who had this horrible incident back at the end of World War II where he saw a bunch of his buddies eaten by sharks and thought he was going to, and now he just fucks them up for a living.
Hell yeah, he does.
Makes sense.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he really fucks them up. And then Hooper, I guess, I don't even know if his story is true. I was like, that story is like bullshit, but supposedly when he was a kid, he got attacked by a shark and he thought it was awesome, and now he's spending his family's money like going around and learning about sharks. But that's it. We don't really grow anywhere from that other than like Quint, not ironically gets eaten by a shark.
But just the pitching of those three characters against each other, it just works so well. The dynamic of those three together is wonderful. The guy who's terrified of going in the ocean, and the two guys who really want to but hate each other, like the spoiled rich kid with all the toys, and the working class guy who has a shitty boat and goes out there and kills all the sharks anyway. He's like resentful of this college boy. And it's just it all works together so well.
And the growing like friendship, I feel like, of Hooper and Brody,
yes,
like, actually seems
and
to
even Quint
connect.
too. Like they start to connect with him and
A little bit,
identify
yeah,
with him as the movie goes on. Yeah,
Until Hooper makes fun of his tattoo, and then you get a whole serious story about the trauma
It's
behind
dark
it.
fast.
Yeah, it gets real dark real fast. I like. So there's also that kind of three archetypes of authority. The authority of land with Chief Brody is the law. And then you have the authority of academia, Hooper. And then you have the actual authority of the sea. That's what I consider
being the shark
Quint
himself.
to be. And I consider Quint to be the authority of the sea. And the shark is heavily challenging him. Yeah. And he has to, that's why he goes crazy and beats the shit out of a radio with a baseball bat. He has to prove that he's the king of the sea. Challenge Neptune himself. But yeah, I really like that. I'm kind of curious. Do y'all think this is like the only movie that can get away with somebody saying, "Where did you get this boat?" and the character can just say, "I'm rich," because it made sense.
That was hilarious to me.
It's funny, and I was just like, okay. Usually that's kind of like a lampshading thing to fix plot holes later, but it just seemed like upright. They were like, "All right, yeah, he's just rich. He just doesn't talk about it. He doesn't fucking need to."
Well, and it wasn't like just an excuse to explain why I had this boat. It was part of his character, right? And it worked really well with the movie. But that conversation between Brody and Hooper was just hilarious. And they're going out and looking for the shark on this high-end boat that has all this radar equipment and stuff. And Brody's like, how did you pay for all this? Is this like the Oceanographic Institute? Do they just give you this? He's like, no, I bought most of this myself. He's like, are you rich? Yeah. How rich are you? Me or the whole family? Okay. Yeah. That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Very humble in his richness, his wealth.
But I do think that plays it favors that we can just stick to the action by just, that's enough. That's kind of what we need to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't need to flash back to anything. It's all
much
going forward.
Everything in the movie, much like the shark, is only seen kind of from a surface level, only as much as you need to. You only need to see a shark fin to know there's a whole ass shark in the ocean.
Unless it's a child with a fake shark fin.
Oh, yeah. Unless it's a child with a fake shark fin, in which case you surround him with men with guns. Teach him to never trick you again.
The only time that everyone had a successful reaction to the shark when it was a child with a fake fin.
So that is actually interesting. I was going to dig into that scene later, but let's just talk about it since we brought it up.
Let's go.
It is interesting. I agree that's the time everybody actually freaks out and actually treats it as an issue. We don't get the music, the stinger, the Jaws theme that's so famous, which I was like noticing it this time to be, it's so obvious it's not a shark because we don't hear the shark music.
Yeah.
And right, like everything works to where they zero in on it, and then it's followed by a scene immediately where people pay no fucking attention to an actual shark eating a guy, and we hear the music and everything. And I was just thinking about that when I was watching it, of like, oh, that's kind of an interesting, like, we get the fake out that you get, sort of in a horror movie, a fake out or whatever, but it's kind of obvious that it's a fake out.
Yeah. it's almost like the audience is in on the joke, like that we know that it's not a shark because the music isn't going, and maybe we don't realize it on a first watch, but at a subconscious level, we kind of know that it's not real. But they're also, instead of the music, we have all of these horrifying screams of all the people that are sprinting to the beach. And it does work really well without the music because you actually see the raw panic in these people and you hear them screaming their fucking heads off and sprinting for the shore and like pulling their relatives out of the water. And there's this like, huge reaction. But then it's like immediately after they're like, oh shit, there's a shark in the pool. And Brody's like, oh my God, are you seriously? They're fucking pulling this prank again. And it's like, he's like the only guy who thinks there's an actual shark around.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even believe it, which is kind of like, kind of unbelievable for his character. You'd think he would be jumping at that, knowing that his son was over there where that, that alleged shark was.
Well, he does once she's like, oh, your son's over there in the pool, and he remembers that's when he starts running and jumping over the fences or whatever. But until then, he's like, all right, whatever.
I also liked that moment where he tells his son to go in the pond for him, because there's usually, I would say in a lesser film, you would have somebody explain why you go in the pond. Oh, there's less sharks out there, or less whatever the fuck. Like they just
we haven't
over-explain
seen
that.
one there yet.
Yeah, we haven't seen one as far as we know any of that. But instead, it's a discussion between a teenage boy and his father, in which his dad's like, "Do it for your old man, please," because like his son said something. It was like
the pond's for old ladies. It's like, we'll just do it for the old man.
Yeah, and it's one of those moments where like, hey, I'm appealing to you, go there. And that just tells the audience too, like, oh, the pond must be safe. In that moment anyway, you're like, all right, the pond. Yeah, I mean, what could happen? So then when we see that whole shark thing and then we see the other, I think that the gears start turning like immediately when somebody screams that there's a shark. You're like, oh, if that's not the shark, then the shark's going to fucking show up in that pond and what's going to happen? Rest in peace, random boat dude that rolls up.
Who has no idea that shark is right on his ass until it is in his ass.
So oblivious.
Yeah.
If he had survived, that the life joke that all of his friends would say is, if that had been a shark, it would have bit you, or some shit about the things he forgets and can't find, or whatever the fuck it is. Very insensitive asshole friends.
I kind of would have liked to see him survive and just have like bandages all over his ass and like not be able to sit down. Like that would have been kind of funny.
That's for the sequel. That's for when Brody's son starts hunting sharks in one of the other sequels.
The like screams of them going up the beach is also undercut with like comedic bits mixed in there, where guy like throws his kids off of their thing that they're floating on so he can float in.
Yeah.
Which I guess is supposed to be horrifying, but it's funny. It's just like, it's funny to me.
Yeah.
Like how much of an asshole he is.
There's still a lot of funny shit in this of people like the opening sequence, which is horrifying from one perspective, is hilarious from the other.
Yeah, that's a good point. The drunken boyfriend is it's pretty fucking funny.
Out,
him just constantly murmuring to himself that he's coming.
Wait, I'm coming!
Like while he lays on the beach and clearly powers down. It's just like, that's hilarious. But then you immediately cut back over to a woman screaming at bloody murder. Steven Spielberg always seems to have a good grasp of when to switch the tone, and even blending parts of that. I mean, I'm not talking about later Spielberg. We're not getting into like Ready Player One and all that stuff. No.
Crystal Skull.
You mean just like Jurassic Park?
I'm talking about Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, except for the one that he hated.
Crystal Skull.
He also hated
he wasn't paying
Doom.
attention during Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
He was fucking phoning it in.
Yes.
I think you could argue that about maybe 30% of Spielberg movies, honestly. But yeah.
But yeah, like just those moments. There are other moments too where it's just like, it can go from funny, like the tattoo comparison, where it's just two dudes like dick measuring basically about how many tattoos they have.
Yeah,
the scars.
Yeah,
talk
I
about their
love
scars.
that scene. It's so good.
It's just fun, and you're getting into it and having a good time, and then immediately it'll just take you into this long traumatic story.
Yeah, it is like, I don't know that it really qualifies as a horror comedy, but that's kind of the experience of watching it, right? Like it's almost funnier than it is scary, but it's terrifying in those scenes. And he does that without making it like jarring, like tonally. Like it feels like it all works together and should be part of the same movie in a way that works really well. And I feel like there have been so many movies since then that have tried to be horror comedies that are just terrible in all respects, like not scary and not funny. And
Looking at you, Cocaine Bear.
yeah, there you go. There you go.
Well, yeah, and this isn't going this isn't going to primarily be comedy or out and out comedy, right? He mixes it in a way that feels realistic mostly. Like, I think there are some funny bits that are funny to us as an audience, but for the most part, it's honestly probably kind of funny to the people there, right? Like the enjoying the talking about the scars and all that, and they're laughing about the things that they were doing before. Like that's characters actually having kind of a good time together, and it is a funny break for them as much as it is for us as an audience.
Right.
Like I would say the only like funny but not funny to the characters would be the main, like the big scene, so to speak, of Scheider's throwing the chum over and the shark comes by behind him and he doesn't see it and then he backs up and we're gonna need a bigger boat. That's funny.
That is hilarious.
Even though that's like the biggest jump scare ish, maybe moment in the movie.
I also love that Brody, after he gets scared by the chum segment, and he's like, Robert Shaw's like, I gotta call it in. And he's just like, you calling in for a bigger boat? Is that what we're getting? Like he says that just like an offline. It's like he's dedicated to getting that bigger boat. He wants that.
Also, I think Spielberg does an interesting way of building up tension in a way that makes it feel realistic to you as an audience.
Yes, for sure.
What you're talking about with the head popping out, it's tension because our characters are concerned about it. Brody is like, don't go in the water. He doesn't want he doesn't want Hooper in the water. Hooper isn't certain what he's going to see or what he's going to find. We see the boat slowly. It's in fog. Like everything is built tense in a way that you would be concerned being out there. Similarly, a lot of the shots are done with this like half water. Like the lens is like partially underwater, partially above water, like giving you and it kind of bobs up and down, giving you the same feeling of like actually actively being in that water and kind of uncertain of what you're seeing.
Yeah. I noticed that so often with the movie. It was something I thought about for like a few seconds when we were just watching the boat out at sea, that the camera as it's watching the boat is drifting. So it's not like a helicopter shot. They're not trying to like stage it from land. They actively wanted to get that same kind of motion as that the ocean can provide with its waves. And I thought that it made it like feel way more engrossing than if you had a static shot of a boat from afar. Even if you had like a really zoomed lens onto it, it just wouldn't feel the same if it was static.
Yeah. There's a lot of shots that like feel like they're POV, even if they aren't, like it's like, is this shark POV? Is this one of the bystanders there that's looking on at what's happening? It just really pulls you into the film and makes you engage with what's going on.
Yeah. I think I would also talk about Spielberg's ability to mix all the different types of footage that he's having to work with so that we don't see a lot of the shark. I think that's like, one of those bits is he knows how and when to use it.
Well, I think he was forced to not use it because like the shark was getting waterlogged and they couldn't actually like pull it out of the water. And like, John, you were saying that it was designed for fresh water and that it was in salt water and it's getting deteriorated.
Yeah.
So like it was almost this movie was almost kind of like a happy accident where like the shark was supposed to be more prominent. And like, yeah, the couple times where you see it full, like, jumping onto the boat, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that pulls me out of the movie a little bit. It's like not scary anymore. And like having to work without that and create tension without seeing the shark makes the movie so much better than if you just have this derpy animatronic shark showing up in all these scenes.
Yeah. In the same way, we see just sort of like pools of blood. When the girl is on the beach, she's kind of just all covered in like seaweed and crabs. Like you don't really actually see her. Like a lot of that's also kind of like left off screen for you to imagine.
Yeah. How did she get so far up the beach, by the way? She's like, the tide must have washed her like so far up because like at night she gets attacked and in the morning they find her and the tide seems to be at the same point at both times. I'm not a fucking tide expert.
And I know I'm not the smartest guy in town, but tide goes in, tide goes out. Never a miscommunication. You can't explain that.
But like they're up by that fucking fence. That's like 40, 50 feet up from where the water line was, and she was mauled 40, 50 feet beyond that. It's like, how the fuck did her remains get pushed? And there's just like
Those
a
crabs
puddle,
carried her up.
Yeah,
a
so I was
puddle
gonna
of
say,
human
it's-
soup just like sitting there in some grass.
Crabs pulled her up there, man. Crabs, the
Yeah.
Smurfs of the sea. Oh, no, wait, that's the Snorks.
It is also like, and there's a little real shark footage for like one scene barely. But I was interested watching it, thinking about how much is shot in the ocean,
Yeah.
which apparently was not very far off the ocean, but he was really careful to make sure you never saw land. It always just felt like it was always in the ocean. And then how much is shot on the Universal back lot, and how to mix those two together. Actually, in my mind, I'm like, that's pretty tough, because I'm like, you're having to they filmed in Martha's Vineyard. So I'm like, you're having to film in Martha's Vineyard, all the island shots, all of your ocean work, the fucking shark. Then you have another shark in Hollywood and the back lot and these pools that you're working with, and you have to intersplice it to make it look good. But I'm like, they had an actual orca ship that they took out and sailed and took shots, and then they had another one that they cut in half and stuck in a pond and took shots with, right? Like, yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. And Spielberg, I would say, like, that's actually what's interesting, is how in his career, I think the movies he does really successful is where he's able to kind of use some of the technology to blend together several different things, so you kind of never do get brought out of the movie. It is absolutely bonkers what the fuck happens in that cave in Temple of Doom, and whatever you feel about that movie, it does actually feel like it's possible. You stop later and you think about it and you're like, this makes no fucking sense. Like how big it is, where these rail carts go, like any of the other shit. But when you're just watching it, he does a great job of just like making it make sense to you as a viewer as the action goes by. And he's mixing together all of these different elements to make one sort of cohesive thing that's happening.
I think that's like the Spielberg sparkle. He is like
the Spielberg sparkle. Is that patented? Is that
yet.
Trademarked? Yeah.
There you go. That's the Spielberg sparkle, everybody. It's one of those things, like we've talked about Christopher Nolan before and how Nolan is just all about the spectacle and what he does. And I feel like Spielberg's the same, but Spielberg has a lot more love for the audience in what he makes and how he makes it, and trying to make it much more believable for you, rather than I'm just trying to set up big stage pieces so that I can watch them. He seems to have a better appreciation. And Ryan, as somebody who has multiple theories about multiple movies and will dissect and pick apart even the smallest details, I feel like Spielberg makes movies that you can be like, all right, I feel like I can actually turn my brain off for this and I can just coast. And I don't need to, like, I can think about it later for sure, but the filmmaking itself just carries you, as opposed to other movies where you have you and I both have a tendency to probably get more bored of what's going on, because they're either gambling on an all or nothing spectacle that you're like just going to have to wait for. And in the meantime, you just pick apart all the logic of everything the characters are saying or what they're doing. So it's a real kind of magical talent that I don't know. I haven't seen The Fabelmans. I don't know if that has any Spielbergian conjurings to it.
Well, Spielberg is almost his transformation over his career is similar to how Jaws affected cinema at large, which is kind of weird and interesting to think about. But first of all, we're moving on to our second whiskey, folks.
Fight and flight. Act 2. Second bottle.
Robert Jaws is my hero.
John, chug that Jack Daniels Bonded, because we are now drinking some Cooper Family Rye. This is a American straight rye whiskey that, as we enter the second act of the film, we move away from the pristine American small town. And we're still in the town, but things are getting darker, things are getting spicier. We introduce Quint, played by Robert Shaw. There are people dying. It's getting a little scarier. Rye whiskey is a little harsher and a little spicier and a little bit more interesting, I think, than bourbon, which is a little bit smoother and sweeter. So this is what we're moving into for the second act as we kind of build suspense and move forward. So,
all right, let's crack it open. Booze goes in the glass.
Boom.
Booze goes in your lips. Booze in your stomach.
But I do think it's interesting to continue the thought that, talking about the impact of Jaws and where it has gone. And it's like, it's such a good movie, but it totally changed studio attitudes, right? Where like studios
Right.
used to make lots of movies at medium budgets, trying to make movies for different types of audiences. We're gonna make noir, we're gonna make melodrama, we're gonna make comedies, we're gonna do romance, we're gonna do all these different kind of things in order to get different butts in different seats. And then Jaws comes out and breaks every box office record that has ever existed. And all of a sudden, people are like, oh, we should just do this. And studios start concentrating their money into fewer films at larger budgets. And like, oh, we just need to make something that's fun that people can kind of turn their brains off and go and see some big spectacle. And we've just kind of gone more down that spiral toward inevitable doom, where we're just like, every year studios make fewer movies at larger budgets, and like you don't have smart adult films anymore. And like Spielberg is even getting to the point where like he was making movies that were kind of dumb fun, but they were really well made, to the point where now he's just making dreck that it costs a lot of money but isn't good at all. And it still makes money because like we've been trained as cinema goers and consumers to just like eat up that same kind of shit because that's all that studios make anymore. And I always think it's like a chicken or egg argument, right? Where people are like, well, this is what people want to see. They don't buy tickets to our indie movies, so we're just going to make big movies. But like, they don't put marketing money behind their more adult, smaller films. They don't make mid-budget movies for adults anymore, right? Like, you don't see a $70 million movie anymore. That doesn't exist. It's like, it's either $3 million or it's 9 figures, and that's kind of it. And so it's interesting to see how Jaws has affected cinema at large, where it's like a movie that I really like, and every time I return to it, I have a shitload of fun, but I also kind of wish it didn't exist.
Yeah. And I think so The Exorcist was 2 years before, and also was kind of a ridiculous blockbuster. And it's also an excellently put together movie, but it also has a lot of technical things, and it is generally trying to fuck with an audience. And that was part of the big sell, was like people, coming out and being like, oh my God, I can't believe that I just watched that. The difference between The Exorcist, Jaws sold shirts and lunch boxes, and it also started people wanted stuff around it. It had a very iconic poster, and then that poster got used on a ton of stuff. The theme, which won the Academy Award in a weird way, where John Williams had to give himself had to run up and get the award and then run back because he was doing the orchestra at the Academy Awards. So he was like doing all the music for the Academy Awards, runs up and gets his Academy Award, then runs back. Yeah. But that also, I think, added, and again, we were talking about music previous episode about how like that just becomes that like Jaws theme, just
it's
perfect,
so good.
but also repeatable and in so many things since.
I've been watching a few other Spielberg movies. I watched the Star Wars Episode 4 recently as well, and 5 too, and like all John Williams scores, and they all have this kind of panache to them where he'll weave in little bits of the character themes. He makes a theme for each character and has them all come in. The moment I say something like Leia's theme, you can hear it in your head. It just has that iconicness to it.
Even the shitty Star Wars movies, like Phantom Menace, the score is fucking great. Like the Darth Maul score and the lightsaber scene and all that. It's like horrible movie.
Yes.
But the music is so good.
Hell yeah. And it's just one of those things where now I feel like I was also thinking about this because John Carpenter said that he always wants his scores to be like wallpaper. He doesn't want them to have an impact on the room you're in, the space you're in with the characters. He doesn't want them to influence your emotions and manipulate you. He wants them to just be like an atmosphere you step into. Like when you walk into a place with different wallpapers, you definitely feel different energy from it, depending on how they're light or dark or whatever it is.
I would think that his Halloween score is doing more than wallpaper, but
I think that there's like that kind of tension, but it's just like philosophically different than something like what John Williams does with his scores.
Right, yeah.
And now most movies, of course, most mainstream movies are just spectacle films. It's Marvel. It's whatever action is going on. I really don't recognize the scores in a lot of those movies. It doesn't just...
Yeah, you leave the theater and you couldn't remember a single note from the score.
You could put a full playlist of all the Marvel movies and like put it on shuffle and ask me which movie it's from, and I would never fucking know.
You wouldn't even remember that you've heard it before.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be like, wow, this is new to me.
Is there music in Avatar? In the Avatar movies?
I think it's flutes.
It's just like reworked Titanic music that is
that's
put
what I was gonna
back
say.
into the Avatar movies.
You can, if you
Slightly
listen
twisted.
closely, you can hear the digitally processed out Celine Dion in the background. But yeah, Jaws just does it so many times. I was saying that right after we watched it. I really loved hearing Quint's theme come into play, because you can tell when it's Quint's theme. It's basically any of the shanties he's sung. They just make a little John Williams flourish, and they put it over parts of the other pieces in the Jaws score. And it's like, oh, that's just nice. Like, that's how I know something's going on. Like, subconsciously, Quint is doing something that's heroic or so Quint of him. I don't know.
Or fucking crazy.
Absolutely. Which is also really fucking Quint of him.
I think the composers for me that I love the most that like do that similar thing that you're talking about, where just have these iconic scores that stay with you forever, are Ennio Morricone and Bernard Herrmann. Like they're just, like Herrmann with like Taxi Driver and Vertigo and a lot of other Hitchcock films, and then Ennio Morricone with all Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns and all those that just like stay, like just live in my head, and they just play occasionally when things happen that remind me of those movies. Those scores just start playing.
Yeah. They make you feel cool by association, or you live out those are the ones that conjure like the actual movie in your head. Whereas, like I was saying, if I listen to a Marvel score, I'm like, this is the scene where they're all around a table talking about taking down the bad guy, I think. Yeah. Like, they all sound vaguely the same. Or, oh, this is the scene where they're all around a table talking about how they're going to pull a heist to take down the bad guy. Any of those things.
I'm looking at John Williams' IMDb page. He wrote the score for a 24-minute video called Return of the Ewok. And now I want to find that.
Oh, wait. Is that a documentary?
Yeah,
or is
I think I've seen it. No, I think it was they did those little like TV movie.
I saw a copy of
Shitty
this.
Ewok.
I saw that for $20 at a half price books. And I was so tempted to buy a VHS tape and send it to you, Ryan. But I felt like it would just, I don't know. I felt like you'd never watch it. I thought you'd already seen it, and you probably wouldn't.
Oh, I've definitely seen those bad Ewok things.
This sounds like a
no
meta fake documentary. We are like way off the rails here, but the description on IMDb says young Warwick Davis decides he wants to be in pictures, so he gets himself an agent. The agent gives him an Ewok outfit and points him toward Elstree Studios. There, Warwick wanders from set to set looking to find the other Ewoks.
Oh, that's one of those. That's probably one of those like pseudo doc behind the scenes things where they
it's like a mockumentary.
Oh, look at how Hollywood's done, and I could just see Warwick Davis in a Ewok costume being like, "What are you guys doing?" And they're like, "We're rigging up the lights, Warwick." And it's like,
and that was in 1982, so that's before. Like that's definitely like that's right before Return of the Jedi. So that's like prime.
Yeah,
like we're still trying to cash in. Fucking throw anything out there, people will eat it up.
Yeah.
Jaws is interesting because it's in contrast to the B movies.
Yes.
Like this would just be a B movie.
Absolutely.
A decade before.
I believe a decade before it was a B movie when Burt Reynolds starred in Shark. 1969
actually, yes.
Shark.
Exactly. But we don't, and that's where I'm like, the key piece we're missing is we don't have any really long exposition about sharks. Like our scientist Hooper, like a couple of times mentions and talks about things, but we don't really dive into like, let's actually think about it. And there's no mention of like, oh, he's a 20-footer, 25-footer. And that's it. We don't really talk about the fact that it's a bigger shark. Why is it a bigger shark? What happened? How did this shark get so big? Like in modern movies have gotten back into that bullshit.
I like how they're talking about the length of the shark and Quint is like, how you look from his dorsal fin to his tail. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? Okay. Like how you tell the length of the shark is you look at it. Great. Thank you. That's wonderful. Like, are you supposed to extrapolate to where its nose is? Like, I don't like. It's just such a funny throwaway line.
That reminds me because like that line is funny on the surface, but then I got like way deep into thought about it. Just because when I watched, there's a documentary about like whale scientists that were trying to figure out how whales communicate. And they actively have to train every day to tell how far away a whale is from them. They're like, that one's 200 feet. That one's this many feet. And they just go out
by
and
sound?
They
Or by
they have
looking?
binoculars, and they just have they try to do it from their visual sight. One has binoculars, so they're a spotter, and the other person just uses just their eyes.
Oh,
and they
wow.
try to guess, and they actually correct each other based on what they think it is. And I was like, that's fucking fascinating. So thinking about like nautically, how do you size up something? When Quint said that, I was like, holy shit, is that actually true? But also I was like, that's fucking insane. Like, what the
Well,
fuck?
those are the only two things you can see also for the most part,
yeah.
right? If the shark is breaking the surface of the ocean, you're going to see the dorsal fin for sure. And like, maybe you'll see the tail. It's
Yeah.
like, I
Well,
guess
yeah.
you would have to estimate based off that.
And you have to get the
yeah.
proportions. That's like how you know the general ratio of where it is. But I'm just like fascinated by those are like the way more fire from the hip kind of measurement styles. And I'm like, that's kind of rad. I'm not gonna lie.
I will say this movie does throw out, kind of blink and you miss it kind of bullshit about sharks as well.
Oh,
like, it is
yeah.
just trying to, right? It's like nobody knows how long they live for. They could,
Yeah,
be
you're right.
3,000 years old.
It's like, no, that's a fucking lie. What are you reading, a McGraw-Hill textbook? Jesus.
Yeah, we get another good like comedy-ish bit when Hooper cuts open the shark that the guys have caught that supposedly is the shark to find out if
Yeah.
and there's the like they don't really digest stuff, which is like, okay, maybe like they stay in the stomach for a while, and then he pulls out like a fucking tin can and a license plate. And he's like, these will eat anything.
Just as I thought, he came from the Gulf Coast, and he throws out a New Orleans license plate, a Louisiana license plate. Yeah.
We haven't talked about my favorite scene in this movie.
Oh,
and there's a lot of
let's
great
do that,
scenes, but
yeah.
my favorite scene in this movie, and we're already on to Act 2, but it was in Act 1 technically.
Oh
I
no!
think.
I mean, we're not talking about this in
jumping-
any order. I'm
No,
just
I know, but
introducing the whiskey. In
when I
act
say
order,
that,
but,
I put my hand on the whiskey bottle to indicate that I am in Act 2
Yeah.
of my whiskey drinking. My favorite scene, I love when a small town goes full vigilante in a movie.
you gotta love it. Yeah.
You really just have to appreciate the what is it, the chutzpah of some of these members of the
Are
town.
you talking about when Hooper is introduced?
No, I'm talking about when Bubba
everybody goes and gets on boats and just
Yeah, when
dynamite
Hooper,
and-
Hooper shows up and he's like, you
It's
know those
roughly around there.
those 8 guys that got in that boat, they're gonna die.
I like that scene, but I also love when they don't really have names, but I'm just gonna call them like Bubba and Daryl. They just go
Sure,
out to
that
the
sounds
dock. They go out to the dock, and
Oh,
they've
yes.
got Bubba's wife's like roast, her holiday roast for the 4th of July or some shit. And he's like, "This is your fucking holiday roast. What am I gonna be doing?" He's like, "Well, get $3,000. You could buy a whole lot of roast with that." Like they chuck it into the fucking water. And then Jaws just brings that whole fucking dock down, and it becomes an extension of Jaws. And you're just seeing it like that's such a great fucking scene. I love watching the tension of. I've never felt so gripped by watching a dock float around in the ocean or the bay. As I have when Bubba's trying to swim back to shore, and Daryl's like, "Bubba, you gotta just trust me, Bubba. Don't
turn
look behind
back.
you.
Go.
Yeah, no
Go,
matter
go."
what you do, just fucking go." And it's like, all right, that just masterful tension building without having to see the shark still, and it's at night too. Some of this is just so bold for shooting and the lighting that it shoots in. I felt kind of in
Yeah.
awe that I could tell what was going on, that it felt so competently done.
This is also right on that border where they start shooting night scenes at night because like
At night,
film
yeah.
technology wasn't good enough to actually capture enough light shooting at night. So you watch a lot of 60s westerns, like a John Wayne movie, and the scenes at night, but you can see people's shadows because they're just dimming the scene that was shot in the day and saying it happened at night. But like you can tell the Jaws was definitely, those night scenes are for sure shot at night.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's either in a studio or day for night. This is like, there's
Yeah.
actual night shots. Though I will say that I was awfully confused by what time of day when they have their little like talking about their scars, because it kind of seems like they just stay up all night.
Oh,
I
they
guess.
definitely do. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that appears to be like daylight, like
In
early
a-
sun up, and when they're doing that.
Yeah.
In another movie, they're actually just hallucinating that they saw Jaws because of their insomnia in the ocean.
Because of the apricot schnapps.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
I love that Quint asks as part of his payment a case of apricot schnapps. It's just like that is the least likely alcohol that I would have expected him to utter.
Yeah.
And it's fucking hilarious. Just so good.
Apparently, he drinks horrible shit because whatever shot he gives to
Oh, it's his own
he just
homemade
spits
shit
out.
too. Right?
Yeah, he's like, I made it myself. Oh man. I also love the scene where Hooper goes to Brody's house and like that night after they catch the shark that isn't actually Jaws, and he brings over 2 bottles of wine. He's like, I didn't know what you were serving. I brought red and white, and they sit down at dinner and Brody just opens up the bottle of red and pours himself a pint glass full of red wine. Just like, hands the bottle to Hooper, and like, you know, he pours a normal glass, and Brody's just like starts chugging this shit, and he's like, what do you say we have another drink and then go down there and cut that shark open? And he's just fucking chugging this pint glass of red wine, and you know he's about to pour another one before they go down there.
That's also like Hooper sits at the table and he goes, is anybody eating that? And takes what is probably Brody's dinner and just starts eating it.
Doesn't wait for an answer. Just, is anybody eating that? And just starts shoveling in the
that also leads
mouth.
into that other great, like, again, we're just at this point recounting fantastic dialogue between the characters in this banter, but like that whole segment where fucking Hooper is just like, you're gonna come onto the boat with me and we're gonna go out and check out that what's going on, we're gonna go take a look at night. And Brody's like, no, I'm not drunk enough. And Hooper's like, yes you are, you're absolutely drunk enough.
I saw you drink all that wine, you're definitely drunk enough.
It's great. Just a fantastic back and forth between these characters, and it just constantly, Spielberg is molding your love for all of these characters, despite the fact that they have differences, they have fights and everything. It draws you in no matter what. I never felt like I hated any one of these characters, despite.
Oh no!
Even when
except the mayor.
Yeah, I mean the mayor. Yeah,
you're supposed to hate the mayor.
Yeah. Well, he fucking wears a suit full of anchors on it.
Dude,
okay?
his suits are
Oh my
else.
god, those sport coats! Holy shit! Like baby blue with anchors and fish and pinstripes and shit. Just
everything.
absolutely wild.
Yeah, and his right hand man who looks like Carl Reiner or something. I don't fucking know. Just like gotta have these shops open. That whole gang, yeah. I was just like, even the coroner who fudged his fucking report, just they're all made to be scummy. And yeah, these are the people that would totally fudge the numbers so they can get more money in the fucking small town.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like all the main characters themselves, like even when Quint bashes a radio, which is like beyond logic. That's when you see there's an actual logical reaction on screen to give you that catharsis as an audience. When Brody's just like, the fuck are you doing? Like, what the hell is this? What's going on? Are you a madman? And
yes.
Yeah. And Quint is absolutely mad. To the point where whenever Brody's wife called too, he did that quick, he's like, oh, we only caught a few marlins, blah, 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 gotta go. Just like hangs up. Just that shit. Those moments, they only draw you further into it feels like this interesting balancing act between loving a character, actually relating to them, and loving the actual suspense, the spectacle, and the drama that you're being pulled into. And I think that it's the peanut butter and chocolate of this movie, how it's done so well, that by the end of it, you're actively like, fuck no. Like when Quint gets bitten in half by Jaws, or when you have Hooper in the cage and the cage doesn't do shit to fend off Jaws.
Yeah, no. It lasts no time.
And like every character predicts that except Hooper, you know, like he's like, no, it's going to be fine. Like,
he's got his academics. He's got his, all of his theory and everything else. He's a city boy.
Well, and I think if Hooper had an affair with Brody's wife, you wouldn't be as invested into him, right?
Yes, that's right.
No, I want Quint to have an affair with Brody's wife. Or the mayor.
That would be fine.
Quint or the mayor. Yeah.
That wouldn't
You
change
go to work,
Quint.
I go to your house. I go in your wife. Your wife's in the house or something.
Kids in your wife.
Another good Spielberg shot that just made me think of when the mayor and Brody are walking and talking, and the mayor's talking about like, we have to get it, you know, it has to be this shark, we have to get it open, like all that stuff. And then we pan past the billboard slowly for Amity. Yeah. And then there's the it's been spray painted on, drawn on or whatever to add a shark and
a shark fin and like big bug eyes on the woman.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And that's like a great reveal, like to that comedic bit, the way that kind of works in a scene. And again, I'm like, it feels natural that it could happen, and it's funny, like it works.
Yeah.
And the mayor is like, Brody, you need to find these vandalizers. These people are destroying public property and blah, 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 blah. Like, you need to stop looking for sharks. You need to start looking for these pesky kids. And then, like, you pan out even further, and the people are still there spray painting it. It's like they're right fucking there behind them, and they can see them when they're having that conversation. We can't as an audience until the camera keeps panning further. It just like so undermines the bullshit authority of the mayor at every turn. It's just like, it's great.
Yeah. Well, at the beginning of the movie, there is that background of the kids that are causing trouble, that at the beginning when he's already on the, like, I gotta grab a sign, I gotta get, and he's like, just takes the shit from the Ace Hardware or whatever it is to go stick it down on the beach. And the people that are coming up to him and like, hey, the Boy Scouts won't get off this pier, and they're, and all this little shit that's like not a concern.
Yeah. That one guy that's like, there's some kids that have been doing blah, blah, blah. And it's the contrast of, he moved from New York where he had too much death to a small, quiet town where he just had to put up with bullshit. It's like Hot Fuzz. He's just like trying to chase geese and shit.
Yeah.
There's that like kind of aspect to it that I thought that those were great details too, to have the little, like, the moments where the townsfolk are bringing bullshit to him. And Brody's just like, hey, if I could put it on my desk, tell me about it. Even when he's investigating
that guy, when he's like on the
shit.
beach and he's terrified and he's like staring out over the water the whole time, and that guy walks right up to him and he's like, there's a car parked outside my house that might need to get moved.
Oh my God. Just so disaffected by what's going on.
Also, there's in that scene, there's the vertigo shot where like he sees what he thinks is a shark out in the water. I think it turns out to be, no, it is a shark, right? No, it's a real shark.
No, he hears a scream. He hears a scream, and it's a woman being lifted by her boyfriend from under the water.
Yeah,
well,
he sees
but
all
then,
these
but then there
things
is a shark. That's when the boy dies in that scene. The 10-year-old out on that float.
That's right.
And they show Roy Scheider on his face, and they do the vertigo shot where they're like pulling back and zooming in, and it's warping all of the stuff in the background around him. Yeah. And it's like clearly Spielberg has seen vertigo and is trying to use that shot to get this effect of like really pulling you into like the shock that Brody is experiencing as he's seeing that go down. And that works really well. And it's like one of the most iconic post vertigo versions of that shot, that like stays in people's minds. Like, oh, that shot's fucking cool.
Yeah. That shot since then has been abused so many times.
Yes.
So like absolutely, just because it feels cool or it's jarring in a way. It's like the Dutch angle that's been overused as well. Fucking Battlefield Earth. I'm looking at you. But like, yeah, those moments, that subconsciousness to Spielberg's kind of play with the camera, just fucking greatly accent it. And I remember what I was talking about earlier with the kind of small town politics and stuff. I was thinking of Midnight Mass also, beyond Hot Fuzz.
Yeah.
Because that's a whole other thing. That's the same kind of like, hey, we need you to go check out this. And it's just like, all right, some bullshit. And so when something phenomenal happens, and I don't mean that in a good way, I just mean like, this is abnormal.
Yeah.
That it amps up the tension. It like really raises the stakes for the character. So I felt like the chief definitely had it cut out for him. Brody is just like, I've just moved here and I haven't had to deal with a shark. I have no idea what the fuck's going on. We didn't even talk about probably the most traumatic scene is the boy being fucking murdered, which is right after that vertigo sequence. And that whole sequence with the woman, it's all set up from the beginning too.
Yeah.
There's Chekhov's child, man. He's just like, can I go back in the water for 10 more minutes? And his mom, who I don't like, I don't even know. It doesn't really look like mom to me. I don't know what to say about that.
She looks a little old to have a 10-year-old
Yeah, I felt
kid.
really ageist saying that, but it was just like, I don't know. And she was just like, yeah, you can go in. And then when everything fucking hits the fan and you just see him, but there's also like, not only do they focus on him, they're not just like, there it is. There's a dog. There's all this buildup, piece after piece of it's Alex, that's the kid's name. And then you have a dog who goes into the water. And then you have this boyfriend and girlfriend, and the girlfriend's screaming, and the boyfriend's lifting her up. And everybody else is kind of like gently swimming in. Then there's like a whole gang of kids that just run right into the water too. And you're like, who the fuck could it be? And it's this it's the Hitchcockian thing of setting the bomb and letting you know. You know there's a shark out there. Brody knows there's a shark out there. Kids in the water, sharks in the water. Like you're fucking going for it. And that moment when he gets bit and you get the John Williams score and everything else leading up to that foot, you're just like, that part of it's kind of concealed. And then you just watch the kid go down and blood everywhere, people screaming, and Brody immediately just being like, get out of the water. And this is a moment where, Ryan, I don't know if you laughed, Dixon, I don't know if you laughed as well. I can't remember, but everybody running into the water made me slightly laugh because it was a moment where I was like, no, don't do the thing he's telling you not to do. But then they come back out.
We're running into the water.
They're all trying to get everybody out of the water. And I was like, okay, I understand for the kids. It makes perfect sense. But it's just that initial lapse of what the fuck is happening. And then once all the chaos has subsided and there's just everybody's back on shore as far as we know, the mom is like Alex and calling for him in all directions. And then all that you see is his deflated raft washing up on shore with the blood. It's just blood drenched.
How much food coloring did they dump into that ocean? It was just washing up onto the beach.
Red 44, baby. So there you go.
I think too, like the scene to me that has the greatest emotional impact, that is like very different than the rest of the movie, but it's so well done and it lands so hard, is when the mourning mother walks up to him when they have caught the alleged shark that isn't the real shark, but she walks up to Brody in like full mourning dress, like veil, black clothes. And she's like, I just heard, Brody, that you knew there was a shark in the water and you didn't close the beach. And now my son is dead. And she like slaps him in the face and just goes on this long rant about what a piece of shit he is. And Brody just sits there and takes it. And then the mayor, then she turns around and leaves. And the mayor's like, don't worry. She doesn't know, she's not right, what she said. And then Brody's like, no, she was definitely right. Like, and Brody, like, Brody knows, like, even though he knew there was a shark and he was trying to push back against the mayor, he knows that he didn't push back hard enough, right? And he could have potentially done something, even though his boss is telling him, no, you can't do what you think you need to do to stop this terror. He caves to his boss and decides, to just go along with what he's been told, when he knows in the back of his head that he is right. And it's like, I like that it sets up Brody as a character that you can really get behind and care about, because he accepts his failure and he knows it's his fault, right? And like, yes, the mayor is more at fault. If the mayor wasn't an idiot and told Brody, you can, absolutely close the beaches, then it would have happened and the kid wouldn't have died. But like, he also knows that there's still some level of guilt there, right? Like, you can't just fucking write it off, Pontius Pilate, wash your hands of the thing and blame everybody else, right? Like, and I think that sets up his character really well and makes you really care about him throughout the rest of the movie.
Yeah, that scene is immediately followed by him sitting with his son at the table, where his son starts mimicking him.
Yeah, which is a great scene too. Yeah, where he's got his head in his hands and his son is doing the same thing.
It's kind of sweet and beautiful. And he's like, give me a kiss. Give us a kiss. And the kid's like, why? And he's like, because I need it. Like, just in that moment, heartbreaking. Like that whole sequence, this is the difference, the dividing line between this being a thriller that has a lot of heart and great filmmaking and an exploitation film is, in an exploitation film, that mayor would have gone out on the boat with them and been eaten by the fucking shark.
That would have been fun. But,
that would have also been fun, but that's also like the easy path to a gratification. And here it's way more about getting invested in the characters, getting invested in the actual action, going beyond that moment. There's only one scene where the mayor vaguely gets the comeuppance, and that's in the hospital when he kind of has this realization where I feel like that's a turning point for him. He says, my kids were on that beach too. And I feel like that's an interesting overlap for him, where he's trying to use it to diffuse Brody's anger, but he also realizes that he's bullshitting him using his kids and using that excuse in this tragedy. And he just is like, Brody's like, just fucking sign this form. And he goes ahead with it. Like, I think in that moment, it's so pinnacle for the mayor
Yeah, and I think it's too like he's realizing that he's full of shit, right? Like you see him realize it on camera. Like you don't know that he even has kids until that point, and like knowing that his kids were on the beach while he's trying to encourage everyone actively to get in the water because he needs the press to write an article about how safe the beaches are, right? And like even though there are all these tourists there that are spending money at all the local businesses, he needs them to go in the water so that the journalists can write a positive article and get more tourists to come, right? And like his kids are there and he doesn't give a shit, right? Like this guy is the scum of the scum of the scum of the fucking earth. And he is realizing that on camera, how much of a piece of shit he is. And like it's a pretty interesting scene how it unfolds there. Anyway, I want to talk about the actual hunting of the shark. And so we're moving on to the third whiskey that we're going to be drinking here for the final act of the film.
Fight and Flight, Act 3, third bottle.
We're going to need a bigger glass.
This is Ardbeg Wee Beastie. This is a Scottish whiskey that is a coastal whiskey that will punch you in the teeth, just like Jaws himself, and it's called Beastie. So I felt like it was a fitting whiskey for the final act of the film.
Can you give us a Scottish pronunciation of the title?
I can give you that.
That's fine.
Wee Beastie.
There you go.
That's probably,
that was your Scottish Trump.
A wee beastie.
Wee beastie, don't we, folks?
we love wee beastie, don't we, folks? A big, beautiful whiskey. It's a wonderful deal.
I have friends call me that out on that all the time, and I'm like trying to do an impersonation or an accent like you're just doing Trump, and like fuck,
you just
you're
fall
right.
into
Yeah, you just can't stop.
Slip into it.
Gotta switch to Robert Shaw.
Wee beastie.
Yeah, let's dig into Act 3, the back third of this movie, which is just our three heroes, ? Going out on the ship to kill the actual shark. Which I do love that, like, there is a certain amount of the first shark that gets caught, and Hooper's like, it could be this shark. We don't know, 100%. I don't think it is because the bite's not big enough. Once they get on that boat and the first time they see that shark just pull the fucking barrel under, I like that all three of them are like, yeah, this is the shark.
Yeah.
Like, there's no more question.
I love the methodology that they use to hunt the shark. It's like you don't really think about it before they get to how are they going to fucking actually catch this thing that's so big? You have Quint super confident that he's going to be able to get the shark, and you see like the fucking hundreds of shark jaws on the wall of his shack on the beach, which, like, if I ever own a shack on the beach, that's how I'm decorating it. But like you don't really know, like, how are they going to go about this? And then you get out there and they have these like massive yellow empty plastic barrels that they like tie to a harpoon and shoot the harpoon at the shark when they see it, so that like it can, it can't go underwater because it has this balloon basically pulling it up to the surface. And it's a really brilliant way just to think about how you would hunt something like that, but also visually it's so good because you can see when the shark is like, oh no, there's no way with two barrels he could go underwater, and then he does anyway, and they're all in shock, and you are as a viewer, and then you see it surface again at another point. You can kind of track where the shark is underwater and how he's trying to attack the boat, and you can kind of see the strategy of the shark as he's trying to take on his prey, and it just works really well as you're following this. And like, sometimes you lose the shark for multiple hours and they start sharing war stories about all their scars, but like, in the back of your head, like, that barrel's going to show up again at some point. And it just works so well as they're tracking this fucking thing. It's just a great scene.
It's funny because when we were watching this movie, Dixon, your current lady friend who loves Disney, we were talking about what Jaws would be like as a Disney film, and you were like, "Oh, the alligator or the crocodile from Peter Pan."
Yeah,
and it's that the yellow barrel is the same
like
thing as the ticking clock.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing. You see that. As long as you see it or you hear it, something's happening. And that I was like, with them in that moment, I had that overlap, and I just was like, wow, Dixon predicted, like, right before we watched it, you said something like that. And I was like, holy fuck, he's talking about this.
That is one thing I was going to say. Spielberg does, you mentioned like Chekhov guns.
Chekhov children.
You show a child in Act 1, you got to kill him in Act 3. It's just
That's right.
how it works.
Yes,
Those are the laws of screenplays.
But I was gonna say Spielberg does this sort of like laziest check off where he will show you things a couple times, and the first time you see it, it completely lampshades this is important. It's not sort of the like later you're like, oh yeah, that thing like kind of comes back to you. It's like the first time you see it, and it, you know, in this case, it's like the cartridge, the CO2 cartridges or whatever, like kind of bump as they're going on the boat. And Hooper's like, oh, those things will explode. And you're like, that thing's going to explode. Like, it just is so on the nose.
Yep.
But he does that. Like, Spielberg will, like, zoom in on something or kind of cut, like, turn the camera a bit to show you something and just completely set it up in the same way. I'm like, the barrels are, like, over the top obvious, but it does work. Like, it just goes ahead and gives you that. That's the turn off your mind, is, like, it tells you everything you need to know, and subliminally you'll get it if you don't. It's on the nose. It's there.
Yeah. The yellow barrels, they stand out on the boat. They definitely visually grab you from that perspective. There's also a lot of things in terms of the way that Spielberg does blocking, how he shows things. You can really pick up on any of it once you've seen it once and you go back and you're just scanning the film for other pieces that tell you something. I think that Spielberg does the right amount of space between when he does that and when you actually find out that it's going to be put to use. Like, you maybe have 30 seconds of, oh yeah, this is going to happen. And then it happens, as opposed to, again, in any schlock that we have watched, you're like, they're going to fucking do that. And then they fucking do that. There's no way that you could ever miss when a schlock movie is trying to show you something or telegraph, because they just ham-fist it in and don't care. And Spielberg really just layers it on with comparisons about scars and sea shanties that Robert Shaw sings and whatever else that will distract you and delight you. And you're like, who the fuck are these characters? And by the time that you've come back to the actual narrative pivotal points, you're like, oh, that's right, that was there. And it immediately, you hook back into it.
I like to have visually how the barrels, they're like in this row, and when they shoot one of them off into the shark, they all scoot forward in the thing, and it's like, it's almost like it's reloading, like the ship is reloading barrels, and like it's like something that, like, you always see it when they shoot a barrel, all the remaining barrels move forward, and it's like reminding you how many barrels they have left.
Yeah, it's like a ticking clock.
Yeah.
It has that same kind of essence of, we only have this much left and we don't know if it's going to be enough, because when they say, oh, it's got one barrel, it can't possibly go down, then it's got 2 and 3, and it's like, there's no way that the barrels could possibly go under, and they keep doing it. And you're like, I don't know if I can trust the barrels anymore. I don't know if I can trust anything on the boat that would actually kill this thing.
Well, and the boat is falling apart at that point. When they've got 3 barrels in it, the boat is like falling apart because the shark is like rammed into it and eaten into the side of the boat, and it's like collapsing into the ocean by then. And yeah, it's just...
I like at one point the shark hits and it knocks over the lantern and part of the ship catches on fire.
Yeah.
And Quint just matter-of-factly is like, Brody, put that fire out.
He's got more important things to do. Like, Quint is always ordering people around because he is the sea god, and he has to order around everyone else to do the grunt work, you know, like, throw that chum into the water. You know, like, Brody's like, why doesn't Hooper have to throw the chum into the water? Like, Hooper drives the boat.
I'm master, I'm captain, what all he lists off. Yeah.
He is Captain Ahab, basically, in this movie.
Exactly.
And it just works great, you know. It's just
yeah, that whole sequence building up to it. And of course, I mean, we don't really need to talk through the shark being killed. But it's a fucking great scene. Because the whole ship goes down, everything piece by piece. You're building that tension of who survives, because we've seen Hooper hanging out on the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, we don't know what his deal is, and we've seen Quint get eaten alive by the shark. With like, that's the one scene where like the shark like comes up on the stern of the boat, and you're like, oh, okay, that's animatronics. That looks pretty fake when he's like moving around and stuff. But then when he like gets Quint in his mouth and it like zooms in closer where you can't see the whole shark, that looks more real, I think, than when they're just showing the whole thing kind of flopping around. And it's hilarious to see Quint die and just like, you know, yelling unintelligible bullshit drunk on apricot schnapps and getting drawn down into the water. It's like, that's the only way that he could go, right? Like, he has to die. That's just how this is going to go. But it's still very satisfying to see. And then you got like, you know, Brody's just stuck up there as the boat's sinking and doesn't know what the fuck to do. And like, tosses the CO2, the extra CO2 can into the shark's mouth, and somehow like right before the boat falls into the ocean shoots the CO2 can in the shark's mouth and just fucking obliterates it. And you see blood flying everywhere.
Him and and him and Hooper paddle back to land on 2 barrels and whatever's left of the boat.
Yeah.
And then you go. It just rolls credits right from there too. It doesn't even fucking care.
Yeah, they don't even get back. You see him as the credits are rolling, slowly get to the beach.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate the fact that they did not do any. Oh, he's gonna hug his wife and see all his
they
kids.
ended it at the right point for sure. Honestly, I almost wish they ended it a little bit earlier than they did, but they definitely didn't need to bring it back to land and like deal with the aftermath of the shark and all that. I feel like every modern director and producer, like before they go make a movie, needs to sit down and watch Jaws.
It's like a film school thing.
Yeah, because it's like if you're gonna make a mass appeal, big budget movie that you're just trying to sell a bunch of tickets and make a bunch of money, like you can do that and make a good movie. It is possible. Like, go watch Jaws, look at how they did that, actually think about how you were staging things, how you were building suspense throughout the film. And I wish more studios would think, because like, this was the first blockbuster. It led to kind of the garbage cinema that we have today, but it was a good fucking movie. And there's no reason that we have to live in this world where modern cinema is just like whatever dreck we put out that is based on some stupid IP that we think is gonna, get some people to go see it. Like, you can actually make a good movie and like, hey, let's think about how we're going to stage these scenes. Let's like storyboard this out. Let's do some practical effects. Let's bring in some, write some interesting characters, bring in some actors that can actually portray those characters in a fun way. And just like, there's so few blockbusters that do that anymore. And like, it's like that. This is my mixed feelings about Jaws. It's so good, but it led to this shit that we live in now. And I'm just like, man, like if there's no reason that this movie had to create this world that we live in. It's just like people took all the wrong lessons from it. It's like the reason Jaws sold so many tickets is because it's a good fucking movie. Yeah. And like, I wish that modern Hollywood would look back on this more and think like, okay, how do we do movies like this today and make them, it's like, I know, Ryan, you're going to roll your eyes. Top Gun Maverick is a modern blockbuster that just like did a bunch of shit in really practical ways, and they made a really fun movie that was really good, and they sold a shitload of tickets, right? Like, it's possible to do it. It just doesn't happen very often.
Well, I think it's interesting that we talk about Spielberg's career and where it's at. Like, he's making a summer blockbuster now he doesn't give a fuck about.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
But we talked about James Cameron before, and I'm like, Terminator 2 is also like a fucking excellent, perfect action movie blockbuster. And then I'm like, yeah, he kind of fucking phones it in with Avatar. Like, I've enjoyed them, but they are
he's working really hard on them, but only on the technical side and not on anything else. Like, they're shit scripts, terrible characters.
Yeah, they're just fully spectacle.
Yeah. Have you guys seen any of the sequels? I have not, and I want to, because like I actually really like shitty like sci-fi channel shark movies. Like, they're horrible, but like getting some friends together and drinking whiskey and watching those movies is a really good time.
Oh yeah.
And like I probably should watch the Jaws sequels at some point. Like, I've heard they're all awful, and I'm sure they are.
Yeah, they're awful.
But like,
yeah, I'm surprised we didn't death pack this one, John.
yeah. I do like I'm going to watch the Jaws sequels at some point, but I'm curious if you guys have.
I have not. I've only watched the interview with Roy Scheider where he admitted that he hated having to do Jaws 2. Yeah. That made me want to watch Jaws 2 even more.
Ryan, it sounds like you have.
Yeah, I've seen them. They're bad, and they're kind of just stupid. And at the same point, I think the other problem is that they get more shark action, and the effects are all still kind of crappy.
Yeah.
And at the same time, like, Jaws 3 is fully just like, oh, we want to capitalize on 3D. We want to capitalize on the Jaws name. We want to jump scare, fuck done. We want to throw shit at the audience. Like,
put the gimmicks
it goes all the way back to a B movie. It goes back like completely the other direction.
Yeah, to like 50s sci-fi kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, kind of, right? Where it's just like exactly that kind of like crappy, B movie. Yeah, exploitation. It fully immediately becomes an exploitation of itself.
Jawsploitation, yeah. As the Robert Shaw, he was here earlier. He said that, right?
Yeah.
Clint was at the table.
What a cool guy.
Yeah, so cool.
And I think that we see that a lot, right? Like we talked about Jarhead, how many movies just immediately the sequels are already fully derivative of themselves. They're the best example of why there doesn't need to be more of these movies.
It's what it's like, and this might be the booze talking, but
It's
like,
definitely the booze talking.
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Booze.
Mr. Booze. Mr. Booze.
Have you heard that song? It's great.
I have not.
Mr. B-double-O-Z. That sure spells booze.
It's like seeing the Mona Lisa and going, chicks are hot. Like you see,
Okay.
no, like we'll run with me on this here, because you see the Mona Lisa and you ignore all of the
Too drunk to run.
subtleties and the hobble with me on this one. All right, you see the Mona Lisa, and I'm just assuming anybody sees it, and you, instead of registering the subtleties, the subconsciousness of the subtle smile or any of the brushstrokes or any of that shit, you instead see a woman there and you just immediately objectify her. And that's, to me, what seeing Jaws as a studio is. They go, wow, that's a lot of money. That shark's scary. That shark could make more money. That shark good. And that's what they do. They don't give a fuck about any of the other aspects
cash.
of it. Yeah, exactly. Just go for it. Right into it. And it's disgusting. It's like, all right. Which explains why all those movies fucking absolutely suck. And Jarhead as well, because they just fucking missed the point of any of what the original was trying to do.
Yeah.
Story-wise.
I will watch the Jaws sequels at some point, and maybe I'll report back on this podcast about
Let us
them.
know when you get the 4Ks.
I don't think... Actually, Jaws 2, they just came out with in 4K. I
Vinegar
am not
syndrome?
planning to purchase it. I don't need the 4K restorations
You
of the
say that
sequels.
now, and then you're in a
Can
half-price
you-
books, and it's $3, and you just can't
right.
pass it up,
Who
can
knows?
you?
Yeah, we'll see. If it's $3, sure.
Is there anything else that we haven't mentioned about Jaws? I feel like we've picked it clean to the bone.
Yeah, we've gone super long on this. I'm loving this whiskey. John, what was your favorite whiskey that you had out of the three? The Jack Daniel's Bonded, the Cooper Family Rye, or the Ardbeg Wee Beastie?
I believe it was the Wee Beastie.
The Wee Beastie
I
is
had
fucking great. I love it. That's definitely my favorite
a
of the three.
fantastic time with the Wee Beastie.
Yeah,
You know?
I love me a good peaty scotch.
Yep. Wee Beastie goes in the glass. Glass goes to my face. Wee Beastie goes in my stomach. It's just a great time, honestly.
Wee Beastie goes in your dick. Wee Beastie goes in the toilet.
All right, so we have our take on our whiskeys. Let's
Yes.
I guess we'll go around and give our final.
Ryan, how was your Jack Daniel's Bonded that I assume you had? I assume you had 3 drinks of it.
My Jack Daniel was good. I did actually accidentally hack up the last shot of it, but
You hacked it up. What?
yeah, it did explode out of my mouth at the very end. But
You did a
otherwise, it was
spit
fine.
take.
Did it hit the back of your throat and trigger a gag reflex?
Yep.
Yeah, I
That's
just
the
I took it
worst.
down just
Yeah.
not right.
Well, Ryan, you would recommend this, right?
Yes, I would recommend it. I'll say Logan enjoyed it as well. Like this was for him. I enjoy going back and seeing these where I'm like, they don't have the cultural touch points as much. Like
Mhm.
Jaws is there, but it's much more subtle and not as in your face where you know like every fucking thing about it.
Yeah.
So you get to sit and enjoy it. He jumped out of his fucking skin when the head popped out of the boat.
Oh, I bet.
That one definitely got him. And otherwise, like he was tense. He spent a lot of the movie saying like how stupid everyone was. Of like, why are they doing that? Don't go in there. Don't go in that water. Like,
It's a horror movie.
yes, yeah. Down to the point of he's like, someone's gonna get tangled up in those lines right before fucking Hooper gets caught in the line.
You're
But yeah,
raising him right, Ryan.
he enjoyed it.
He sounds like your son.
Yep. That's
Yes,
right.
yeah, exactly. And I yeah, obviously I recommend it enough to make my son watch it. Yeah, I think it's a classic. I think it's a watch. I think it holds up just because it's so enjoyable in of itself. Even if you're like, oh, it's dated, it still just is a fun watch, and especially the character interactions.
Yeah.
John, would you recommend it?
I would absolutely recommend it. I had recently an experience where I watched it and it didn't pan out too well. Somebody in the audience just talked a little bit too much for me to enjoy Jaws.
This was not the recent watch that you and I
not
shared.
at all.
Yeah.
That was a very quiet and engaged watch. There was occasional commentary from anybody in the gallery, as it were, and it was fine. But yeah, like I thoroughly enjoyed it every time that I've seen it, even during that watch where I couldn't really pay too much attention. The score would bring me back. The characters would bring me back. There were still moments that just suck you in, and I fucking love it. It's great. Sasha also, she bemoaned that she would have to watch it one more time in the span of a month. She was like, I don't have to, I already watched Jaws.
Wait, did you guys just watch it a month ago?
It was when, we watched it like a month ago. And so Sasha was like, we just watched it like a month ago. Why are we going to watch Jaws again? But she also had a jump scare when that floating head came out. She was very engaged and totally like just seems to have been fully on board with it by the end of the movie. And we all cheered, I think inside. I don't think we cheered vocally, but it was just like, hell yeah, when Roy Scheider just was like, smile, you son of a bitch.
Oh, yeah. Great line.
Yeah, just fantastic. That's the good. I would recommend. How about you, Dixon?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend it. The movie's just so well done. I really appreciate the artistry and the care that is put into crafting the film. And it's just like, it's something that is like, you know, you hear a douchebag like me talk about how like, oh, this movie is so well made, but like you don't notice it while you're watching it, right? Like you watch it a second and third time, you're like, oh my God, this is just so well put together. But like you watch it on the first view and it just grips you so much throughout. I don't know anybody who doesn't like Jaws, right? Like it's a movie that anybody can get behind. You know, like I love like depressing independent films, and I really like Jaws, right? And you know, like if you know, different people who have different kinds of tastes, like everybody likes Jaws. Before we wrap, I'm curious to hear if you guys like, for me this is the best Spielberg film, and I'm curious to hear from you guys where this falls for you, or if you think a different Spielberg film takes the top rung of his filmography.
Oh man, that's a good question. I have a soft spot for Jurassic Park. I just can't shake how much I love that movie.
It's been a long time since I've seen that. Like I probably was a teenager the last time I saw Jurassic Park. I owe it a rewatch. And the Jurassic World movies, like I saw the first Jurassic World, and that's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. And it just like
it'll only get
kind
worse.
of just made all of the others tainted in my mind. But like I do owe the original a rewatch at some point.
Yeah, Jurassic World does a disservice to Jurassic Park, but Jurassic Park is also
there's a good
faithful
T-Rex and an evil T-Rex, and they fight each other to save the humans or to kill them. You know,
my nephew loves that shit. Just proves 6-year-olds love dinosaurs, big lizards.
Oh, if I saw that movie when I was 6, I would have fucking loved it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
he won't stop talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Is that your favorite Spielberg, Jurassic Park?
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think that is. Well, honestly, that and Schindler's List are because Schindler's List just hits hard. Like
it does
that, and it's just done in a stylistically different way than what Spielberg's done before. And it's so personal too, like to what he did. Which also, like I realized when I was watching Indiana Jones that the Raiders of the Lost Ark is like an exploitation film in a way, very much so. Like just boil those Nazis alive, like that shit works.
Die, you Nazi bastards!
That's exactly.
Anybody order fried sauerkraut? Damn you Nazi bastards!
But yeah, that's I think Jurassic Park is my top.
Yeah, I really dig Jurassic Park quite a lot. I do not like E.T.
Oh, you don't like the Raisin Man?
For whatever reason, I cannot stand E.T.
I haven't seen that since I was a kid, and it just terrified me as a child. Like, what? There's a creepy hairless dude being friends with this kid. This is terrifying.
I'm sorry. There's a creepy hairless scrotum that's friends with this kid.
Yes,
that's the real truth.
Yeah. I was like bored with it as a
ball
kid, and as an adult, I just can't see past the like shittiness of the look.
It's also
and the
just an
logic of all of it.
advertisement for Reese's Pieces at the end of the day, right? That's basically what they're doing with that movie.
Yeah, and Mac and Me doubled down and made it an advertisement for McDonald's.
I have a soft spot for Hook, even though I know it's a terrible movie.
Okay.
Oh, boo.
Okay.
Yeah, Hook is bad.
Oh, I love Hook. I will say if I call out like less heard of, like less mentioned Spielberg movies when we talk about them, I really like Empire of the Sun.
I haven't seen that.
I haven't seen that one either.
Yeah. I have always liked that one, kind of come back to it. I feel like I stumbled upon it when I was younger and have come back to it a few times.
Christian
And
Bale's in that, right?
Yeah, that was like Christian Bale early young
Before
Christian
American
Bale.
Psycho, yeah.
And I also really liked Munich. And that's
I
what I've
didn't
gone
see
back
that
to
either.
a few times.
Yeah.
I feel like that movie's fucking excellent. And it came out and got like good kind of critical reviews, and I feel like it's sort of just like that was it, and it passed on.
I remember that movie came out when I was like 14, and I saw the trailer and I was like, oh, that looks so good. And like I kept trying to convince my dad to let me watch it, and it was like rated R and there were some boobs in it or something. So I was like never allowed to see it.
Bullshit.
And then I just kind of forgot about it as an adult and never sought it out. You're telling me that Jaws is your favorite Spielberg film, is what you're saying?
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I do think Jurassic Park is like a perfectly crafted, put together. And I have watched that one more recently because I watched it again with Logan, of kind of like, now that he's hit the PG-13 category, we're going back and watching classics, and like fucking Jurassic Park just hits so many like perfect notes, and how much the effects work still holds up.
Yeah.
Like, it was the same thing with Terminator 2. I'm like, it still holds up. Like, the shark looks kind of shitty, and it probably looked shitty in 1975. But those dinosaurs look fucking good.
Honestly, the Jurassic Park effects look better than the Jurassic World effects. And it's not close, honestly. Like, because they actually use animatronics in Jurassic Park and it looks legit. And Jurassic World is all CGI. And you're like, though, that looks fake as fuck.
Some bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I have Jurassic Park 3D, Dixon. We should watch it sometime. I feel like that it's like when Spielberg was going through a whole phase. He did Jaws 3D, did Jurassic Park 3D.
Yeah, I'm very hesitant to watch films that were shot in 2D that were then retroactively put out in 3D.
I would
seems
say
dumb.
it is as dumb as it seems. It is not as gimmicky as it sounds, and it gives quite a bit more scale to the actual animatronics in it. And that's kind of the fun part of it for me.
Yeah.
But the rest of it's like fine, whatever.
I do love Laura Dern. So
Laura Dern, so does David Lynch.
Yep.
So yeah, there you go.
I love David Lynch.
And I love Lamp. So
Love Lamp.
John, are you just looking at things in the room and saying that you love them?
I love Wee
Is
Beastie.
Laura Dern in the room?
Yeah, I love Laura Dern.
Yeah, Laura Dern's been in the corner this whole time.
Laura, come over here and say something. Come on. Don't be shy.
We love David Lynch, don't we, folks?
That was my Laura Dern impression.
I'm fucking breaking down here. God damn it.
We told you we were getting drunk during this episode, listeners. This is you knew this is what was happening.
The eventual end.
Don't open Dead Dove Inside. Oh, God.
It's Dead Dove Do Not Eat.
Oh, sorry. Dead Dove Do Not Eat. Of course you would remember that.
All right. Well, as we're winding down to insanity and smashing radios, probably time for us to wrap up here. And
I will catch the shark, not the fucking Coast Guard. I'm gonna drink all this whiskey before they get here.
That was it. And all around the table, recommend for Jaws. I have been your host, Ryan King, and with me,
John Garcia. The spirits are in me.
To finish this off, we have
Michael Dixon. Thanks for putting up with our bullshit.
You said finish us off. Hey there, movie buffs, TV toughs, and all listeners in between. John here from the Afterthoughts podcast. I just wanted to drop in at the end of this episode and say thanks for listening. If you've got afterthoughts of your own to share, hit us up. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Afterpod, or jump into a conversation on our Discord server. You can find info for this and more at theafterpod.transistor.fm. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.